Since I'm the first speaker from a company that isn't world famous yet, we're a services provider in Israel. Also, we have people in Serbia. We're about 100 engineers strong. Our customers range from startups to the big guys. We do front-end design, verification, all the stuff you see up there. As far as me, it's just what he said. I quote Clarke's third law. It's there too. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And I've been using Formal for a while, and I still feel that way about it. It still surprises me and comes up with stuff I never would have thought of, and I love working with it. So I'll start with a story. Once upon a time, Formal services provider and potential customer. And if on the previous slide I imagined myself a wizard, on this slide I'm more of a snake oil salesman trying to get the customer to a product I believe in, of course. So we tell them we can show you a better way to test your design. And they say, OK, here's a design of ours that they think they already tested. And that was our first mistake. When you want to prove how great Formal is to someone, you take a design that hasn't been tested yet at all so you can get the low-hanging fruit. If they've thoroughly tested in simulation, there may be some things you find, but you have to work a lot harder. So after a few days, we did not find any bugs, sad icon. But the customer was willing to work with us. If we could guarantee them that there weren't any bugs, that would also be worth something to them. So sure, yes, we can do that. And all we had to do was make these few reductions. And the customer skeptically asked, oh, but can you guarantee us the reductions don't mask any bugs? And we really couldn't. We said, well, everyone in Formal uses them, which of course is not a very satisfying answer. With your permission, I'll share some Talmudic wisdom. The Talmud was written about 1,500 years ago. And loosely translated, Rabbi Huna said that the second time a man commits a transgression, he already sees it as permissible. And about 200 years ago, Rabbi Israel Salanter added, and the third time really becomes a good deed. The Hebrew word mitzvah is somewhere between good deed and commandment. The idea is it's an observation of human nature, that the first time we do something that really we know we shouldn't be doing, we're nervous about it, it bothers our conscience. The more often we do it, the better and better we feel about it, and the less it bothers us. Verification engineers used to look at the source design RTL as being sacred. And you couldn't change it because once you change it, you weren't testing the real design anymore. But as Formal engineers, we've gotten so comfortable with reducing array sizes and things like that, that we do it even before we try running the first property. We say, oh yeah, that array's too big, let's reduce it. And we're even proud of ourselves for how creative our reductions are, which is kind of dangerous. So I'll define what I mean by reduction, because I know different people use different terms for it. So these are the things. First, I'll talk about what aren't reductions. Things that you can do to make it easier for the Formal tools, to make it easier for complexity. You can recode your RTL as being more Formal friendly, stuff like replacing spaghetti code with clean state machines and counters, which is generally a lot of work. The payback for that is low. We can argue on return on investment, what's low, mid, whatever, but it's not that great. The overall effect is transparent. You haven't lost or gained anything in terms of modifications if you did it right. Property splitting. If you've got a long sequence that you want to split into shorter chunks, that's also a lot of work. I'll say mid instead of low level of payback, and that's so transparent. You have to worry about it. I'll use the term abstractions here. I know other people, you might use it differently. For black boxing internal modules, putting stopbacks in internal signals, this is not transparent. You run the risk of false failures when you do this, but false failures aren't the worst thing in the world because they're not going to let a bug escape. It just means more work for you to identify, oh yeah, that was a false failure. Reductions, I'll call two kinds of property reductions. One are property reductions where it's like you limit the sequence length, or design reduction where you actually go into the code and reduce the depth of a FIFO or the width of an internal counter. And those are very low effort and very high payback in terms of reducing the complexity of your design. So you really want to do it. You're encouraged to do it. But there's the risk that when you do that, you're over-constraining your design, and you're going to have bugs escaping. So we should be a little bit afraid of doing that. Here are three examples of reductions where we limit this input sequence length, where we say the payload length is always going to be less than a certain count. We reduce the depth of a FIFO, or we reduce the width of a counter. Is it safe? with apologies to Dustin Hoffman, Sir Laurence Olivier, for anyone old enough to remember, that movie. Is it safe? So reductions, we usually do them in consultation with the designer based on manual inspection. I said, yeah, I think that ought to be safe. It's not. We'd really need to get better confidence that these reductions really are safe. So I had a brainstorming session with some of the local Israeli Jasper support guys, Yaron Shilu and Yotam Gil, who aren't here. And we came up with this idea of exploiting coverage tools, but not in the standard way that you use coverage tools. And I'll explain what I mean by that. Okay, so here I'm going to look at what happens to assertions when you go from the full design to a reduced design. What type of migration you might get in results. Right? So some of them just won't change. What passed still passes, what fails still fails, and unresolved might stay unresolved. Of course, if you're doing reductions to get everything to resolve, those will probably hopefully go away. Then there's the improvements, where unresolved pass actually does show up as pass, unresolved fail does show up as fail. Non-productive, where pass and fail become unresolved, which doesn't make sense because you're reducing complexity, but it could happen. False failures, which might be due to abstractions, sorry. Okay, and the thing we don't want, which is bug escapes, where assertion that really would fail on the full model shows up as a pass on the reduced design, or properties, that's bad. Okay, so how could that possibly happen? What could cause a failing scenario to give a pass result after the reductions are applied? I mean, after all, what Formal does, I mean, this is how we advertise it to our customers, Formal tests all possible conditions. So how could it have missed? So we must have made something to make this, done something to make this scenario not possible. So how do we detect this? We run reachability coverage on both the full and reduced models to confirm that nothing became unreachable as a result of our reductions. Let's say you have someone claiming that he can tell you how many leaves there are in the tree. So he looks at the tree and says, yeah, 3,427 leaves. And you don't know how to count leaves on the tree, so how do you know if he's lying or not? The way I was taught to test is you have him turn around for a minute, pluck a few leaves off, tell him to turn around and say, okay, now how many? If he can correctly tell you how many are missing, that means he really could know how many leaves are on the tree. And we're doing something similar here. We're using reachability coverage to tell us, we don't care how many leaves are on the tree. That's the standard use of coverage. We just want to know, did anything change that affect what would be reachable, which would allow a scenario to disappear, which would allow a bug to go undetected. So what do I mean by reachability? Now, there are lots of ways that you could have non-100% reachability. There aren't necessarily bugs or problems. You could have dead code. You can be intentionally over-constraining things. You can be using a common IP block and not exploiting all of its features. You can have illegal stimuli, or you can have scenarios that are removed by reductions. And that's badness, and you want to avoid that. So what does Jasper Gold give us for reachability coverage? It will auto-generate a full list of statement, branch, expression cover items. Then you can run cover proofs on all of these cover items. And the result it will classify is reachable, unreachable, or undetermined, which means you didn't run it long enough. And there's some knee curve that if you run it for 10 minutes to half an hour, you'll get the bulk of what's going on. Then you want to run it another 10 hours, you'll inch a few more, but not much. Designs I played with. Then we run the reachability coverage on both the full and reduced models, and we compare the results. We see how many leaves fell off. So this slide looks similar in flying arrows to the other one, but it's different. The previous one was assertions, where we talked about how the results of the assertions migrate, and with the idea being that we don't want to run the full assertions on the full model because the complexity is too big. We don't get them to resolve. We want to run it on a reduced model to infer what the full model will do. Here, we're talking about cover properties, and we are running them on both the full and reduced designs properties, and to see how that migrates there, which will tell us if we lost anything. So first, we've got all the ones which are no change, which are great. We've got the improvements again, where the undetermineds become reachable or unreachable, that we know what they are. We've got a whole bunch of counterintuitive ones. Wow, blue there, purple there. A whole bunch of counterintuitive ones where complexity is reduced, and we wouldn't expect them to make that migration. So they're a little questionable. We probably want to look at them. And then we've got badness. We've got the ones where reachable actually becomes unreachable, or even the cover item goes missing. Again, when we have this, it doesn't mean that there is a bug. It means that there is a scenario we're not reaching, which might be masking a bug. Okay, so let me give an example of state machine. Actually, how this whole state machine works is not very important. So it's enough to say that we see that in state A, the two possible next states are B and C. And we have our assertion which says that if you're in state A, the next state won't be A. So you won't have A twice in a row. And we ran the assertion on the full model and passes. Now we introduce a bug. We say that if you're in state A and input in 1 is not equal to 1, then you'll go to state A instead of C, which is a bug. And we run it on the full model, and we identify the bug. That's great. But let's say we introduce a bug and a reduction. Our reduction is make an over-constrained property that input in 1 is always equal to 1. This is an unsafe reduction. We shouldn't be doing it. And when we run the reduced design together with the properties, we find that this property passes, which is badness. A bug would have escaped. So what can we do? We check the reachability coverage. We run, I realize the print is a little small, you can't read it. We're just looking here for the red X's and green check marks. We see that there's a difference between on the assert line, that in fact the full model fails as it should, and the reduced model passes as it should not. We see on the bottom a bunch of covers that neither side gets to, but that's acceptable. As we showed earlier, there are legitimate cases where you don't get 100% coverage. Remember, and it's possible that our assertions aren't complete, and we really should complete them. And we probably want to use coverage to check that. But that's the standard use of coverage. We're saying now, presuming that a set of assertions was good enough, if we only ran it on the full model, we'd be fine. What happens when we reduce? And we see that there's one crossover. There's one cover item that goes from covered to not covered. And in fact, I know this is too small to read, it even identifies in the name of the auto-generated cover item, it calls out the row number of our source code where we have the problem. And here's just another view. This is the GUI for Jasper Gold coverage, which is the new version from 2018-09, which Ziad was talking about earlier, is a milestone in a number of ways. Well, it's a milestone in terms of the GUIs and coverage, as I'll mention in a minute. And see, it actually calls out, you see the red box on the right, calls out the line of source code where we have our uncovered condition, unreachable condition. To do this, I just showed you GUI comparison, so see the show, but actually we had a bunch of nifty scripts written to identify this. We have the tickle script that just how to run coverage. We had a SED script, which the Jasper support guys were nice enough to write for me because I don't know SED, to help me edit out some of the artifacts of the coverage report. The Godzilla Mac, who generates unique property numbers which aren't useful for the A-B comparison. And here's a segment of a horribly written Perl script which I wrote, which actually spit out a list of this cover I migrated from this result to this result. I was able to do a quick analysis of them. Okay, now let's take the same state machine and code it a little bit differently. A few years ago, I was in a startup where one of the young engineers was very strongly of the opinion that all of our code should be written as data assignments. He claimed it was better for X propagation, identifying bugs in X propagation. Aside from the fact that it made the code darn near impossible to read in terms of understanding the logic flow, it also combined control and data, which inherently I knew just felt wrong, but I didn't have a strong reason to say why not to do it. So I'm about to show you one. So this is fine. The code still works. And the assertion on the full model passes. Let's say we introduce a bug. Instead of the line that's commented out, we throw in a different data assignment to give us a result. And the full model, it fails. In the reduced model, with the same reduction that we did restricting in 1, it passes. Okay, but fine, we've been here before. We'll just run reachability coverage and see it called out. So we run reachability coverage, and it does not call it out, which is not good. You know, I agonized over this a while because it said, oh no, this claim I'm making isn't good. So where do we go wrong? Statement branch expression coverage tells us if we've covered all the control possibilities in the code. It doesn't tell us anything about non-control, i.e. data. But we went ahead and we coded this control code as a data assignment. So as an idea, maybe we should try toggle coverage, which is more data-like and might help us. Now, toggle coverage is introduced in 2018-09. It's not an official supported feature, but if you know the right hidden codes, it'll work and it'll actually automatically generate the cover items, and we'll report on them. Okay, so I have to say this very carefully so some of the Cadence guys don't kill me. For real coverage, toggle coverage can be very useful and it's recommended and it's great and it's wonderful. For our particular application where we're using coverage sideways in order to tell how many leaves fell off the tree and not how many leaves there are, it doesn't help us. We see in this case the only differences that we see here on all the toggle cover items are two rows which are too small to see, but those are just properties on the in1 input, which we'd look at and say, oh yeah, of course we restricted the input so it's going to be different, and we wouldn't have acknowledged that as an issue. On the other hand, even more so, any reduction that we make in the FIFO depth or counter width, which could be legitimate reductions, toggle coverage will immediately call us out on and say, no, you can't do that. So for our purposes, toggle coverage is a false hope. Coming to the conclusion, do not use data assignments for control logic. It will thwart the ability of this methodology to help you find if your reductions are safe or not. Sometimes we have control masquerading as data, like the mask. Okay, and sometimes we don't have a choice. Let's say you're doing address pointer generation, where you've got, assign the address equals a slot number times the block size. So we're really using it for control, but we calculate it as a data statement, and you can't code it as control. So I was thinking of ways we might get out of this. I was thinking if we generated covers for meaningful input and output values, say all zeros, all ones, one-hot values, we'd have to play with it a little bit. But I'm thinking in cases like this where you can avoid, there are methods that you can use to generate cover items that will tell you if anything went wrong. Don't fix bugs. I'll leave the graphic as an exercise for the reader. It sounds like heresy to say don't fix bugs, because what we're all about here is finding bugs and fixing them. What I mean by this is if there is a bug in your design, don't throw in the reduction, which has the effect of fixing the bug. Okay, so here's a simple example. We have a FIFO, which is 256 rows deep. The read pointer is 8 bits wide, but the write pointer, as a bug, is only 4 bits wide. So we introduce a design reduction. We say, you know what, 256 is too complex, Formal can't handle it. Let's make our FIFO only 16 rows deep. So we reduce the FIFO itself from 256 to 16. We take the read pointer, we go down from 8 bits down to 4 bits. And the write pointer was already 4 bits, so we just leave it there. And when you run a property on this, it will pass. Not because so much of the reduction wasn't safe, it's because you fixed the bug with the reduction. So you have to be careful not to fix the design bugs when you do reductions on the graphic. Okay, so the process summary that I'm advocating here in this methodology. You introduce reductions, being careful not to fix any bugs. You confirm that there's no control, which is coded as data. You add value covers, which you have to play with to know which ones, for address pointer generation. Then you run all cover items on both the full and reduced models. And then you analyze all the counterintuitive and remove scenario miscompares to see what's behind them. So I went back to the customer design. And here are the numbers, just the raw numbers. You see the unreachable pretty much stayed the same. And there's a migration of tens of cover items from undetermined to reduced, which kind of makes sense. We've reduced complexity, so things are going to resolve better. Actually, but what does that mean? So I broke it down into all the categories. I mentioned I have a nifty script which spits it all out. And here is the transitions we got. This next slide goes through them one by one, and I'm going to ask you to bear with me, and I'll apologize. A well-intentioned colleague conned me into doing the animations on this slide you're about to see. over my better judgment, so please bear with me. Okay, so the undetermined to reachable, there were 42 of those. Now those could fit into two categories. Either it was undetermined and really reachable, in which case having go reachable is an improvement, or it was undetermined, really unreachable, and somehow we removed the scenario, a failing scenario, and made it reachable, or removed something that prevented it from being reachable, made it reachable, which wouldn't be good. So we should probably take a look at those. Next one is unreachable to undetermined, which is counterintuitive because as you reduce complexity, you expect things to go in the direction of reachable and reachable, not undetermined, but we should look at that. Things we should really look at are unreachable to reachable, which is really counterintuitive. It shouldn't be happening, maybe because of the, we did some abstraction, over-constrained it. Reachable to undetermined, again, counterintuitive. Undetermined to unreachable, which is kind of worrisome because anything that goes too unreachable that wasn't unreachable before, we should really take a look at. And 0 in the category of reachable to unreachable. So we see from this that we really were somewhat reasonable. We didn't do anything too foolish in our reductions of causing anything to go from reachable to unreachable. But there are probably a few things that we should still look at just to make sure there's not anything hiding there. So, going back to my once upon a time story. Happy ending. Again, the customer asked the question again, well, but can you prove to me everything really works now? There aren't any bugs? We say, yes. All we had to do was make a few reductions. Oh, can you guarantee these reductions won't ask any bugs? Yes, we can. We developed a new methodology using coverage in a non-standard way to prove that we didn't lose any scenarios by introducing reductions. Future steps. Well, there are a few things that we'd like to understand better. For example, all of the counterintuitive items I said we really ought to look at to understand better. Maybe if we had some guidelines to help us on how we did our reductions, we could avoid those situations, which of course speeds up the process because we don't have to manually look at as many things. We can maybe explore, I did not look at all at FSM transition coverage. Maybe we could use that, that would help us. This is the big item, validate. I acknowledge that this is just a proposal stage. I haven't really proven that it works. I wasn't able to think of anything that didn't work. So what we really need to do is to flush out the process, confirm that we haven't missed any other exception, and it really does guarantee us no loss of scenarios. What I'd really like is for not just to be a confidence building measure, but a black and white, yes, we know for sure that if we pass this test here, that we have not introduced any that we have not removed any scenarios which would mask bugs. And if we did that, it would really be a game changer in terms of how we did reductions. Because today we're still in, I think we're kind of playing a number on ourselves, pretending that we just add reductions and everything's going to be all right. You know, we say, well, formal checks everything. Yeah, but we did this manual thing and didn't check it, and we compromised the integrity of our 100% black and white claim. If this really does flush out and validate and does give us that, then I think it's a game changer. Okay, and I like to automate it. Ideally make a push button. Automatically detect and flag any control items coded as data. Automatically detect and generate the covers for address pointer generation. And this I mostly did already, a script to spit out miscompares for each category. That's what I had to say. Thank you.
Breakneck speed there. I was thinking there was going to be questions. I see a bunch of hands already. So.
Yeah, they told me I had too many foils. I had to talk fast. So.
Got one in the back here.
All right, let's go with that first.
Hi, this is Nimit from Intel. Just one question. How much time it really took for you to really come up with these great reductions in first place? And how valid they were in the sense that, because you cannot just look at a design and then start doing reductions or adding valid reductions. So that must be taking some time.
I mean, I'm not sure I understand the question. Let me say back what I thought I understood. You tell me if I got it.
All right.
Okay. The reductions I picked, I just pulled out of the air as illustrative reductions that would show how this method worked or didn't work. The real work of picking reductions as you design, I'm not addressing here. I'm addressing here, in the course of your verification effort, you as an experienced formal verification engineer, pick the reductions you think you need. And this is kind of a monitor looking in from the side saying, hey, wait a minute, do we think those reductions were valid or not? Did I hit the question or I missed it?
Sort of, but still the question persists, you know. Somebody is working on a new design, for example,
Right.
and, you know, they have some missing or sort of unreachable scenarios over there. How
Right,
quick is to...
they have missing unreachable scenarios because they added a constraint that a reduction that they should not have added, right?
Most likely.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Then overall, how much this process is really feasible to start by using the right set of reductions and how much time it takes.
But okay, I'm sorry. This doesn't recommend reductions. This invalidates reductions. It says you picked 10 reductions and you came up with on your own. I'm not changing anything there. I was saying these 3 that you picked, don't use them. They're bad news.
All right.
I'm still missing, I think.
I think I got your point.
Okay.
I got your point.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Hi, Joe Leslie here at Intel. This is really great. I'm a big fan of finding ways to cover validation gaps, or possibly. I was thinking of a scenario where maybe you had like a FIFO module with a parameterized depth.
Okay.
And it could have a bug, say, only when the depth was a power of 2. Maybe it overflowed some internal counter when that was the case.
You are a mind reader. I spent about a week, about a month ago, agonizing over that because, yeah, I don't catch that. And I finally came to the conclusion, and call me out if not, that that's a case of a reduction that fixes a bug.
You're not going to know you're doing that when you change like 64 to 6, though.
You're right. I have not automated this process. I would claim that this is a known exception, meaning we on future work have to figure out how to automatically detect those. And there's a challenge there that needs to be addressed. I'm presenting, here's a methodology with the steps, and filling in the finer points needs to be done. I'll also appeal to the audience. If you can think of any examples that find holes in this, pretty please contact me, send them to me. I want to know where my failings are.
Thanks.
Oh, me. Once more, Yuri Tatarnikov, SK Hynix, Memory Solution. That's interesting. You know, it's very well known that code coverage doubtfully represents functionality of design.
True.
So having this as a ground for your conclusions about correctness of reduction, you make doubtful conclusion.
Okay.
Don't worry.
I wouldn't say doubtful conclusion, but I will readily admit that there's a difference between coverage versus every possible scenario. And in fact, the coverage as presented, formal coverage as presented is, I've heard the term used many times by cadence support people, it's a confidence builder as opposed to, yes, we know for sure. I've been breaking my head the past month or two trying to think of any case where I would have an escape, similar to what the previous gentleman said, where I wouldn't catch it, but the coverage wouldn't reveal it. And I haven't been able to think of any others other than the exceptions I made, which is why I'm saying this needs to be validated. I haven't presented the proof of saying, here, by construction, if you do this method, it's always going to work, because I know coverage is different than for every scenario. But I'm just throwing this out there and saying, I haven't found any other cases, aside from what I've outlined, that doesn't. So I'm after this is fleshed out, we run it on 1,000 designs and think of all possible scenarios, and people with better heads than me find particular holes in the method. That's a hope I have. I admit I haven't proven it, but it's a hope, and I haven't been able to find any other examples other than the examples I've given of where it doesn't pan out.
Yeah, I noticed that after you applied some reduction, there was an increase in the number of reachable. So what kind of reductions that you have used to increase the number of reachables?
I'm guessing that was abstractions, meaning over constraint. I keep confusing myself every time I talk about it. My blunt answer is I do not know. I did not analyze those specific ones. I got as far as saying, okay, here's a 10 or I don't know, a few tens of things that we have to look at one by one and analyze. To analyze it correctly, I really have to sit with the designer and understand the RTL to know what effect that could have had. And this was a potential customer design, who actually I believe is about to be a customer. But I did not have access to design to analyze it.
Could you think of an example of what could possibly increase the reachability?
Yeah,
when you do reduction?
Okay, going from undetermined to reachable, that's just reduction of complexity, which makes sense. That's very intuitive. To go from unreachable to reachable would mean that.
Just reachable to reachable. That's
What? I'm sorry?
I'm looking for reachable to reachable. How do you improve on the number of reachables?
If they're really reachable,
Yeah, your
then
number
you
of
reduce
reachables have increased, right?
Okay, so where are they coming from? Are they coming from unreachable or are they coming from undetermined? Go back. Okay, which one are we talking about? What?
The one that compares 3747 with 3790 or something.
I told you these arrows weren't my idea. Okay, there it is. Yeah, okay, sure. The big migration is this reduced and it's undetermined to reachable. That one's easy because we've reduced the complexity. So after churning for 10 minutes or 10 hours, whatever, these other guys really were reachable, but they were undetermined because the complexity of the model was too big. By reducing complexity, formal converges more quickly and gives answers. That. Okay.
I have a question here. You are talking about reduction done with.
What you call mutation.
Yeah, but well, not really. Your reductions are done with assumes, but what we call mutations is done with if-defs or parameters change in the design itself. So in this case, we cannot link cover items from the standard RTL and the reduced one. So how do you deal with this?
Well, yeah, we can. I mean, the things that will mess up your mapping is if you change your lines of the code. If you go ahead and say, I'm commenting at this line and replacing with this line, then all your numbering will be off and this comparison won't work. If you leave the signal names the same and you just change the width of things, which parameters, I presume you mean parameters, the width of things or the depth of things.
No, that's bigger changes than this. That's, for example, changing the number of instances of a given module, something like this.
Yeah, that's true. We won't address that, but that's a really aggressive change. I mean, I'm not sure how comfortable I'd feel with that either.